What's up, guys, and welcome back to the Perfect World Masters. This is going to be a winner's game. Got the Dire going up against the Immortals. And for the first time ever in Dota, we're not only starting on time, we're starting early. We're starting 40 minutes early. Where are you at? I didn't know we were going to have suddenly a rolling schedule, but here we are. Get to watch as Immortals just getting done with Pikachu, Blue, and Dire beating SF Express. Now try to fight into the winner bracket finals. We'll see who's going to be able to come out on top. I'm Mike Loris, going to be joined by Franz for this second game. Dude, I am so stoked we get to cast this game because I did not expect this to be played today.
Yeah, it's pretty cool that it's ahead of schedule, which means we get to finish earlier, but also we get to Dota earlier. And speaking of earlier, Jakiro, one of the better heroes in the early game. This hero is really tough to kill in lane. He does really well at trading hits, and as a result, I think a lot of teams like him because it suits lineups that like to get this early advantage and snowball with it. And so, the hero's really good in lane, and he's also really good at pushing towers in the mid game. So, quite a cool pickup from Immortals coming out of the first phase.
And we talked a lot about in the last set about Immortals and their kind of play style where they just group up perhaps a little bit earlier than you would expect and make some aggressive fights happen. In this type of scenario, like, you'll have the Jakiro, you can make the fights happen, yeah, but even if you win the fight just slightly, you can just go ahead and take down the towers. So that's something that Immortals will also have. We've seen them maybe go a little bit too over-aggressive at certain points in the game, but hey, when you're playing a Spirit Breaker, you're kind of allowed to be a little bit over-aggressive. The Dire, though, picking up a rather early Dazzle. Night Stalker first phase is, pretty much as normal as you can get, but opting for the Dazzle is certainly an interesting pick. We see him occasionally, but I don't think we really ever see him picked up this highly.
Yeah, I mean, Night Stalker is sort of a weird position for a hero because he's not the best at early roaming. I mean, his real potential doesn't kick in until nighttime, but I think a lot of teams like Night Stalker as a hero because he helps your team control team fights in the mid to late game. Just because of that vision advantage and just because his tool set is really good at locating targets and sort of stopping enemy targets from casting their spells. And so they open with Dazzle, who's a really strong position 5 hero when it comes to laning and early engagements. And then Night Stalker, sort of the support that helps his team a lot in the mid game.
And we'll see what heroes they're going to try to help out here. Eyes open for heroes like Terrorblade, these very soft yet very high damaging heroes that will like to have a Dazzle behind them more often than not. The Dire can definitely make some aggressive plays happen on their own side of things with Night Stalker roaming around. If you do have a hero that does that much building damage, being able to save them, and especially up against a Spirit Breaker charge in very early on, is quite high value. And usually Dazzle is just going to be a defensive hero, but with a Night Stalker, Shadow Wave, there's a non-zero possibility here that Dazzle actually gets a little bit of blood on his hands early on, especially if Immortals are going to be playing super aggressively with this Spirit Breaker. And because it's Immortals, I expect the Spirit Breaker to be played almost as aggressively as possible. You always dive into a creep wave when you charge someone. So if there's a Dazzle there, Shadow Wave hits pretty hard.
So there's two things particular about Spirit Breaker that make Spirit Breaker games really good, or that make Spirit Breaker games better. First of all, making sure that you win at least 2 of your lanes, or at least break even in 2 of your lanes. Just so it gives more options for the Spirit Breakers to roam around. Because if you're behind in all 3 lanes, then it's sort of hard for Spirit Breaker to do his job. And also, Spirit Breaker doesn't get EXP in games where his team's playing from behind because their cores want to absorb as much EXP and gold as possible, and Spirit Breakers sort of need to hit level 6 at a good time in order to scale into the mid game. And another thing to note is that both teams sort of have only picked, I would say, pretty generic support heroes so far. They haven't really given out any information about their draft, and so if you're both teams, you're really looking at heroes that complement the supports. Since there's nothing really particular about a lineup, like there's nothing dramatic like a Brood Mother or Meepo so far. So I think this second phase will really show where the teams are starting to go with their lineup. So PPD picks up a Magnus, sort of this I guess so far it really just adds a little bit of extra team fight to their lineup, especially when you have a Night Stalker that's there to scout out the enemy team. It helps Magnus land better RPs. And then Immortals, they kind of have to be worried about a combo with the Magnus, right? Like, so like a melee hero like an Anti-Mage or a Juggernaut like in Sven, all of those heroes do pretty well with a Magnus.
It is going to focus the Dire's draft just a little bit. I mean, yeah, you just listed like most of the heroes that you pick up frequently with Magnus. There's always those like emergency backup heroes like PA if you're really getting hit hard in the draft. But for the Dire, they do show off kind of their plan right now. They're going to try to get that steroid onto that one hero. We've seen occasionally Magnus games paired up with a hero like Medusa as well, which can really power farm into the late stage. And it's going to be up to Immortals to try to crack this perhaps a little bit earlier. I mean, Magnus is no slouch in the early game, but for sure these overarching strategies involving this hero usually tend to go a little bit later. And Immortals, they are able to get their hands on the Monkey King. I think it was versus the Dire. I seem to remember like yesterday in, I think it was SLI. I may be speaking out of my ass there, but Immortals just went off with this hero. This type of hero where you're able to play super aggressively, get rewarded for it, and be really clutch with your lifesteal. I mean, that just screams Immortals. This is entirely their hero.
Yeah, there's two important things about Monkey King. First of all, he wins his lane against most melee matchups, so if they put him against the Magnus 1v1, Monkey King will probably win that. The other thing is Monkey King helps you look for kills, and when the enemy team has a Night Stalker Magnus, they're sort of reliant on getting the jump on you, right? So if Immortals, they're able to scout out kills and follow it up with the Spirit Breaker, Monkey King, and whatever two heroes they pick next, they will have the upper hand in the event in these team fights, just because Magnus lineups, sort of the nature of Magnus lineups is that the Magnus gets a really good RP, and then they annihilate your team like in 2 seconds, right? So Immortals, pretty smart picking up the Monkey King. It gives them a laning advantage, and it gives them a way to deal with the scouting in the mid game.
Ooh, but now we have a little bit of a twist here. I mean, I said when you're getting hit hard in the draft, you go for the PA. I love me some PA mag, don't get me wrong. But this hero is actually not that a bad pick up against that Monkey King. Like you mentioned, Monkey King versus any melee hero is going to have a pretty large advantage. But PA, if she really needs to, can start behaving a little bit more like a ranged hero in those scenarios. And even later down the line with that blur can make Monkey King's life a little bit difficult. Just, you got to kill the PA, you got to stack that Jingu, but you're also going to be missing on occasion. He may be the Monkey King, he may have a bar, but that doesn't mean he has a Monkey King bar. But I like that pick for the Dire, and now Immortal's going to stick on their aggressive plan. They already have the Jakiro for building damage, and now they're also going to get that Pugna. Killing off towers for sure is very nice, but also you're looking at Decrepify up against a draft that's most likely revolving around this PA, so that tool also very useful.
Yeah, this Pugna gives Immortals a little bit of tower push. Most importantly, I think it gives them the winning core matchups against against TD so far. I mean, Monkey King does really well against Magnus in lane at least. Not sure who wins in the mid game, but Pugna I think certainly does well against Phantom Assassin at all stages of the game. The Decrepify always good against physical damage carries, and Phantom Assassin isn't a hero that normally buys Diffusal Blaze. So if she buys that, it sort of slows down her item progression away from items like Bashers and BKBs and Desolators. So pretty cool pickup from Immortals. And Dire, TD, they ban Axe actually. And Axe is an offlane hero that does pretty well against Phantom Assassin, right? Especially when you pick up that Blink Blade Mill, so I think that's a pretty smart ban from PBD.
It's also something that Immortals have absolutely crushed opponents in the past with. I don't know if Rev has played it recently, but I mean, it's not like you forget how to play an Axe up against 3 melee heroes of the Dire. That would have been a really rough matchup for them. Bloodseeker also going to be taken out, as Immortals should be looking for their final offlane selection. More building damage? No, it's a... Well, I mean, yes it is, but it's not really your traditional offlane hero. It's the DK pickup for Immortals, now going hard in the building damage, and DK is not up against the most magic damage. It's a lot of physical here for the Dire. So, yeah, he's going to be a hard nut to crack.
There's a lot of potential for TD to counterpick this DK, though. I mean, they still have room for their mid heroes, so they can pick something like Alina that I think does really well against Dragon Knight. They pick up a Viper, who's also very good against Dragon Knight, but If anything, I don't think Immortals are sort of aiming for this building damage kind of lineup, although Dragon Knight does suit that. I think Immortals were just looking for a frontliner to sort of help tank for his team and help scout out the enemy heroes, because if they picked another squishy hero, they would have 3 squishy cores on their lineup, because Monkey King and Pugna are not particularly tanky, so the Dragon Knight adds a little bit of extra tankiness to the lineup, which means that they actually have someone that will frontline for their team. But Dire, they pick up Viper, and I don't know if this is going to be a mid Dragon Knight, but we haven't really seen Immortals select their heroes yet.
Remaining.
Yeah, it's definitely possible that they swap this up a little bit. It does seem like, you're just looking at the Immortals draft, it's like, oh, DK mid, Monkey King safe lane, Pugna off lane. You can even switch that up in any way, but for sure Febby is going to be aiding at least as much as he can versus that Viper matchup, which is going to be pretty tough. But there's not much that a Spirit Breaker can do up against that Viper. Like, you can charge him, but can you actually kill him? It seems like you can only really kill him if the Monkey King is the one in that lane. Like, maybe if it's the Pugna, then you have a chance. But then, of course, you're always going up against a Dazzle. That first pick from the Dire now, able to protect a Viper, able to protect a PA, and those heroes can do a lot of damage on the turnaround, or you can just slip away with a Shadow Blade pickup down the line. So this the lane matchups are looking not too bad for TD with this Viper pickup. I'm still a little bit more concerned, though, about how well this Phantom Assassin is going to fare and how well this Magnus is going to do.
Yeah, I certainly think that Immortals have a bit of a draft advantage right now, just because the matchups work a lot better for them. I mean, Pugna does really well against both Viper and PA. I mean, neither of these heroes particularly want to buy Diffusal, so that Qualifier is going to be super effective. And just the kite factor from Immortals too, right? Like, it's not easy for TD to take down this Dragon Knight to begin with, and there's so much counter initiation coming out from Immortals. You have the Ice Path, you have Spirit Breaker Charge, you have Monkey King Stun, you even have the Monkey King ulti, which should be super effective at zoning out Viper and PA, right? Neither of these heroes want to be stuck in it. I mean, no one really wants to be stuck in a Monkey King ulti, but Dire don't really inherently have any ways to deal with that. So I think if Immortals come out on top of the early game, they should have a huge advantage going into mid-game and late-game team fights.
It looks like for the Immortal side, it will be Pugna going in towards that off lane. DK usually goes mid, is looking to go mid one more time, and well, QO is having some fun with the, whatever this is called, like shapeshift or something like that. Is just going to be going towards top lane, so lanes that for sure the Dire can answer, and they're already making a little bit of a rotation up. They haven't seen all that much, but they're going to walk right in, see no one camping out on this bounty rune, get a super easy one for Pycat, and we'll set up for an interesting offensive tri-lane. Again, this is where you kind of enable your Dazzle to be aggressive with that Shadow Wave, or at least have it be more than a heal when you're working with a lot of melee heroes up against another melee hero.
Yep, and Monkey King's a hero that can sort of deal with this just because he can use that tree dance to be on trees. And did Misery scout him out, or?
I think they see Misery. And now he's trapped. He is going to be able to eat his way through, but it looks like he's going to give QO immediate Jingu stacks. Can't really do that much. That was probably not the plan for either of these two sides. QO is going to get a little bit of HP back with that lifesteal, but for the most part, he's got to play this lane very cautiously, because if he moves up too far, then this will happen. Void and a big Shadow Wave. That's first blood, as QO is going to disrespect the power, the aggressive power of a Dazzle. That's just two heroes, but that is a 160 physical damage nuke at level 1, which is so much higher than nukes usually are at that stage. So Monkey King, only with 1 armor, very quickly dealt with. But of course, putting these heroes up towards top lane means that Zai's going to have a little bit of a tougher time down towards bottom. Febby's messing with him, looking for those greater bash rolls. Hasn't really quite found much, but Forev, as the Pugna, should have this lane pretty well under control. We'll be able to shove this wave pretty consistently towards Zai, but Zai can kind of push it back as well, so this tower might not take that much damage.
Yeah, but there's a lot of kill potential on Zai as well, especially with that charge coming in with the Degrifify Blast. And talking about the lanes, I mean, the Dire TD, they seem to be winning this top lane, and I don't think there's much Dugu can do in this position, especially as these PPD, as soon as PPD and Misery hit level 2, which they should have very soon. And so I think Immortals are sort of just stuck playing defensively in the top lane, and then in mid lane they just sort of have to hope that MP doesn't get knocked out of lane by Viper. So I think lanes are going in favor of the Dire going into the 2-minute mark.
MP will have the bottle and is doing perfectly fine in CS right now, opting for a little bit of tankability with that extra armor over the damage of breathe fire. Most likely just going to keep that Dragon Tail at a very low level. Can't really do all that much offensively versus a Viper, but he can definitely sustain through this wave, especially since now CCNC is now out of mana. He does have the Ring of Achilles, so he will have a little bit of extra mana regeneration, but usually we don't see Vipers building a ton of mana items. We should stay low. Dubu is going to get hit by that big Shadow Wave, and that's going to drop him so low. Pycat and Misery should be able to clean this up, and they will through the Liquid Fire. QO going to try to race all three of them. He lands a pretty nice Boundless Strike, honestly. That was insane value. With Febby coming in, we'll be able to take down Misery. The QO has run out of Jingu, so he has to fall back. Febby, though, looking for the rolls in the PBD. That's 2 shots, no bash. Looking for that third dual breath for a little bit of slow. Never lucky Febby, but he does have another charge, and it's a dazzle, so he's never going to escape.
Immortals, they make a really nice turnaround at the top lane, and I think this puts Kyo in a much better position to fight as long as he keeps his health up. And you know, it's not a bad situation for Dire to be in, especially since they want as much farm on that Viper as possible. You know, Viper's a hero that's normally susceptible to to ganks, but Immortals, they're sort of stuck with their supports in this top lane.
MP taking a lot of damage. They don't really need these supports. Dire, TD don't really need the supports out of the top lane because Febby, he overcommitted a little bit. No Shadow Wave coming in just yet from PPD. Wouldn't have done all that much damage. Spearbreaker does have quite a bit of base armor himself, so that Shadow Wave is going to not completely destroy him. We still see this aggressive style though, and QO is getting a decent amount of CS. In fact, a lot more than Pycat. Wow, only 6 CS for this Phantom Assassin. Like, I guess most daggers are going into QO instead of into creeps, but usually as PA, you're able to do both.
It's a little odd that he's so far behind on CS, and I think that might actually hurt him going into the next 5 minutes, especially since PA is normally a hero that excels at fighting early on in the game, just to accelerate her team and her own farm. Actually, a charge going on PPD. He's a little bit low here.
Doesn't have a Grave nor TP. Plus, he's gonna get hit by an extra bash. Boundless Strike. QO trying to get that kill, but Febby has too much damage for the Monkey King. With PPD to go down up towards top lane, not a terribly huge deal because they're looking to set up on MP mid. Out of bottle charges, does have a Fairy Fire, but he's got a double damage Viper to deal with, plus that Night Stalker. Incredibly easy kill, as you don't really expect the Night Stalker to come from that bottom side after being top the entire game. So CCNC now level 6, just upped his kill power by a huge amount, and will do some pretty decent damage to this tower as well. DK gonna come right in, but again, has opted for a pure laning build, does not have any Dragon Tail, so he is essentially just a really tanky melee creep.
Yep, and away from my prediction, I think Immortals have done a really good job of managing this top lane. I mean, it seems like they've knocked Pycat out of the lane. Pycat's now farming bottom, which means that Hero gets to farm freely in the top lane on Monkey King, which could work in Immortals' favor, especially because their Dragon Knight deals a little hurt from this mid lane. I mean, his CS is up, but he's getting ganked.
Charge in from Febby will be cancelled by the Void, and Misery is just going to go right in towards MP. They do have to deal with bottle charges this time, though. And, of course, that constant threat of the Greater Bash RNG kicking in. So they'll go do a little bit of damage to MP. CCNC did use his Viper Strike there. But in the meantime, Pycat, thinking bottom lane is the quote-unquote safe lane. And, man, you're wrong, because he's going to get charged in by Febby. There's a blast. Raindrop will kind of save him from that, but won't save him from everything here. Pycat will go down, so, I mean, he left top lane trying to get farm, and then he immediately goes down. And PA can't really hold a tower. She can't counter push nearly as much as a Magnus, so now Forev, especially with Dubu's help, gonna start to get to work on these structures.
Most certainly gonna get this tier 1 bottom at least in the next couple of minutes, so Immortals doing really well in the bottom lane, not doing so well in the mid lane, but I think so far Immortals coming out on top in 2 lanes might look to make a big move in the next couple of minutes.
Radiant's bottom tower is under attack.
Febby's making
Dire,
a small move in mid. Maybe
Dyer's
towards the
lineup
Viper.
isn't really configured to handle this, right? Because the only heroes that want to make moves right now are the Night Stalker and the Dazzle. Like the Viper as a hero doesn't really want to move away from the field.
He may not have a choice coming in with the Decrepify, Breathe Fire, and the Drain, and the Charge. They will take down CCNC. PPD's arrival is not going to do all that much, being only level 3 Dazzle. And yeah, it does seem like the Dire TD don't really have enough fighting power at this stage because of how slow the top lane went, how slow the bottom lane went. And now with towers starting to fall, it's going to get even worse. Oh! The bash from Roshan Febby is not lucky at all. He otherwise would have sealed the deal on Misery almost for sure. That sucks, man, especially since he's playing Spirit Breaker and he gets bashed like that. Like, it's just the game telling Febby that Ice Frog does not approve.
Sort of a complete what I was saying. Like, the Phantom Assassin is normally like, if you look at Dyer's lineup in theory, or the Dyer's lineup in theory, going out of the draft phase, Phantom Assassin is like the hero that's gonna make moves for TD, right? Because Magnus and Viper aren't cores that wanna do anything early, but because PA seemingly got really hurt in the early game, it probably makes Immortals feel like they're more capable of making moves. So you'll see, like Forev and
like this.
Yeah.
It's really nice of them to exactly show everyone what you're talking about. Like, yeah, they're gonna make moves with the Pug
It's not a coincidence, right? Immortals are just in a much better position than Dire to make moves right now, and it really shows. I mean, Dire, they can start doing stuff about this, but whenever they make a movement, it's gonna be really obvious.
They have to defend up against so many fronts here. Like, the Pugna obviously just walked in, got to kill him the Dazzle, and walked out. But Dubu's been on this bottom lane now for quite a long time. Pycat's going to try to challenge him. Needs to rely on the luck of the Frog to get this kill, but with Dubu TPing out, no such kill will be had. But he was just camping out on that bottom lane. Now, he's still only level 5, so not the most experience for him. But still, this tier 2 tower will take chip damage. QO is pushing a top lane. Of course, DK is doing what he can over in mid. It just seems like all these lanes are being pushed, and the Dire TD don't really have enough heroes. It does feel like that they're just working with only 4 heroes up against Immortals, who kind of feel like they're working with 5, 6, 7 heroes at this point. There's just so much pressure all around the map. And TD, like, this Dazzle at least, is really, really feeling the lack of that secondary support that can actually push this back in any sort of reasonable way.
So if you're PPD and his squad right now, you're asking the question, first of all, how do we get to where we need to get to? Because Viper's not going to move around. PA seems like she's really hurt from the early game, right? And so, you know, TD, they have to look for ways to stop getting picked off, and then maybe look for pickoffs of their own. But that's a little tough. Immortals, they're positioning 5 heroes like separately on the map, so it's not like Dire will ever, or TD will ever get like a tower or like a really big team fight. And so I think Zai is going to be stuck farming his Blink, and then PP is probably going to be constantly assessing whether or not there's like kill potential anywhere on the map.
It seems like there's always going to be one hero at least on this bottom lane. It has been Dubu. Now that the tier 2 tower has dropped, it may or may not continue to be Dubu, but certainly these heroes hanging around the bottom lane will make PA's life a little more stressful. She should be able to now get some pretty clean last hitting going on, because 32 CS 10 minutes in on a PA is crazy below par coming out from Pycat. So just that constant pressure, that constant grind from these Immortal heroes, giving them a little bit of an edge map control wise. And well, they are going to smoke up. Forev has got the Drain, level 2 Decrepify, and hey, look at that. They have the softest hero from TD in their sights. PPD does have backup from Misery and a Shrine kind of nearby. They're walking into a position where they're actually surrounded. Dubu is going to dual breath Misery. Ice Path will slow down the PA, and with the Blast Drain, oh my god, PA has to back off. They will think about turning things around onto Dubu. They get a lucky crit, but now here comes the heavy. It's the Spirit Breaker. Moo. He's going to be charging straight in. Another strike onto Misery of all heroes. Ice Path will wall him off. Here comes the dual breath, and Misery is going to get graved, so maybe kill off Dubu with the crit. No. He will go down. Almost landed that last right click. They will dive in with Pycat. They will slaughter the cow, but slaughter the hero rather, but the cow's still here. Doesn't have a lot of mana. He will be able to stick up for a charge, and MP is going to arrive from around the corner. Shrine, it's going to be used, and it may give him just enough to charge in towards CCNC. Pycat is going to use the opportunity to blink towards the Spirit Breaker and get himself out of there. Zai is here as well. He's going to skewer the DK back. As tanky as he is, MP can't handle all these heroes by himself. Maybe with QO's help? They've lost the DK for the PA. Charge back in towards Misery as 4Ev is going to set up for the Blast and the Decrepify and the Drain. Night Stalker down again. Zai's none too healthy either, as QO is still rotating in. He is going to jump up to the trees, and oh man, what an ice path from Dubu. He's back from the dead as well. Zai and CCNC both going to fall here as QO cleans up a double. He did die, I think, up top lane, probably from an RP skewer into tower. Didn't really see that, but after all said and done, it is Immortals to take the upper hand in this exchange.
Yeah, it seemed like the PPD squad almost had a good thing going for them with the RP, but you know, Immortals, they kept themselves alive long enough for their heroes to respawn, and since their team is just so much better at taking these fast-paced fights and these early engagements, I think they come out ahead. And Immortals, they continue to solidify their lead despite losing a few kills there.
Monkey King does collect quite a bit of cash. I believe, well, I mean, 4F is 3-0 and 5, so I'm pretty sure he didn't die in that last exchange. Now with that Ether Lens, just building up his mana reserves, and he's doing some pretty serious work for a Pugna, plus is level 9, so Decrepify absolutely maxed out right now, and start building in towards another ward. It's not going to be huge in this game, but still, these levels are coming up big on 4Ev, and his impact is not being stopped either, so Immortals, 3 tier 1s, I think is going to be the next goal here, as this top tier 1 has been sufficiently beaten down by the Monkey King, who is going to go straight towards that Deso. Pure burst damage from physical, and CCNC, as tanky as he may be, still not sure if he can survive that.
Yeah, you know, the Immortals are looking to reset at the moment and maybe assess what kind of moves they can Mangpax. And the one thing going for Podcat actually is that he does have that empower to accelerate his farm. And they do have the Night Stalker to sort of reduce reduce the amount of windows and openings that Immortals have to make something happen. Because you notice, even though Immortals are 6k over the head, they're playing slightly defensively just because it's nighttime and just because they don't see any of the heroes on Dire. Because if Immortals do walk into a bad fight, they get like RP'd, and then the Viper and Dazzle and PA get to dish out a lot of spells and get a lot done in these team fights. PA rather, not TA, going for that Mask of Madness. And it is usually just going to be a farming item, but for sure in this type of game is going to be that double-edged sword, which it does seem like TD kind of need it to be. Still really hurting in the net worth, that PA, and is behind the enemy Spirit Breaker despite having that Empower on her team. Just being able to roll a couple of lucky crits in a row with that insane attack speed, you never know what can happen in those fights. The blink on Zai
will be brought down first of all, and
Zai's gonna look for a big RP here. He does have vision on a couple.
Skewer MP, bring him right up to the high ground. MP does have an armlet. And it doesn't seem like he's really going to have much of a chance even with that, although you can see the lack of damage here as they really struggle to kill off the DK. Finally will do so. And everyone else from Immortals, though, they backed off and leaving MP.
Yeah, you know, Immortals, they have no problem losing MP there, right? They figured, hey, Dire just sort of wasted the time of 5 years to smoke for that kill. They only got 265 gold out of it. Immortals, you know, immediately as soon as the DK got picked off, they started TPing to mid, to bot, even just...
Another skewer. QO is now going to hit with the RP as well. Pycat jumping in and a big heal bomb. QO will land a stick on all of them, but that will not save him, as he will be picked off as well. Zai showing up to this game now. 2 blinks, 2 skewers, 2 kills. Keep doing that, man, and that's how TD get back in this game.
Yeah, it's certainly good for TD, but Immortals have been doing a really good job this game of keeping their lanes up. So they've really been limiting the amount of things that the PPD squad can actually do, because you know they get 2 kills, but Immortals, they retain all 3 tier 1s, which puts them in a stronger position in terms of map control, right? And so that when Immortals are ready to start making big moves again, they'll certainly have the vision advantage and the map control advantage.
Jakiro starting to go for a little bit of extra ice path, prepping for the larger scale fights. opting for that extra disable instead of the more tower pushy, obviously, liquid fire. So I think that's perfectly reasonable going up against these melee heroes, the threat from TD. Immortals smoke up now. MP does have that dragon form. It's only level 1 for right now, which is always a little bit awkward. But the line is drawn by purple first. So CCNC seems to think that, yeah, the enemies are coming. And, well, congratulations, CCNC. You're right. The enemies are coming. They're here, in fact. Macropire with the charge and the Nether Strike. They have Dragon Tail. They already used it, actually. And with Forev to provide the damage, they will slaughter that Viper. And now the push is on. And I don't really think TD can do anything about this. I mean, a Blink Skewer is great and everything, but not when you have to Blink Skewer through all these heroes.
I wonder if CCNC was trying to bait himself there, but unfortunately, no one on his team showed up to help him. And Immortals get a quick pick off, and more importantly, they get this tier 2. So continuing to press their advantage. And if you're PPD, you're asking yourself, hey, when is my team actually ready to take these fights? And how do we create the opening that we need in order for Zai to land the RPD that we need in order to win the fight? So, for now, the TD team, they're just farming what they can, but it feels like they're playing a very reactionary game, whereas Immortals, they're picking exactly the fights that they want, and they're taking them really well.
It does feel like that's kind of Immortals playing the game that they want in this particular game with these particular heroes, but also just in general. This is how Immortals roll. They want to be aggressive. They want to be constantly beating themselves into you. And if you can't respond to it, well, you're just going to lose the game. Immortals now have a Desolator up on the Monkey King. QO has been kind of quietly farming in the background with this Midas. Now with that Desolator, not only is there going to be massive physical damage, a little more tower damage, but it does open the door for the Roshan from the Immortals side. It isn't going to be incredibly clean up against that Magnus. They don't really have a ton of damage versus that Rosh, but at least right at this point, it's going to be a possibility. And with that, they could, consider how they're going to go up the high ground and really limit those options that you said PPD is going to look for.
Smoke coming out from Immortals. They have the Monkey King showing in the bot lane. He's got a TP ready. I think if anything, what Immortals are trying to accomplish here is they're trying to get ward vision in the enemy jungle, especially since the PPD team, they have 2 wards in their own jungle, so they're not going to expect Immortals to make this kind of movement. But the smoke does break on Dubu. They see Dubu. Immediately backs off.
Well, where's the mag? Zai is very defensively positioned. That was a kind of an awkward smoke break there from Dubu. He just walked right in and just stood there, so it's like, oh, well, I guess I'm revealed.
But it's also not exactly easy for Immortals to initiate in that position because Magnus is most effective as a counter initiator. So if someone else on his team gets initiated on first, you generally get a bigger RP, right? Just because the enemy team is grouped up. And so Immortals, they probably sense, hey, we don't see the Dazzle, we don't see the Magnus, so it's actually extremely difficult to kill this PA. She's going to get graved and we're going to get followed up on by an RP. And you can see like both teams are kind of playing it safe. I mean, neither team has a flash farmer like Alchemist, Sven, or Anti-Mage, so they're not like in a hurry to... Actually, Febby's going to get caught here.
Monkey King Illusion, not going to scare TD back. Monkey King proper, will throw out a stick, and Febby's going to charge away. Zai tried to go for the skewer. Febby is free and clear. But he's got power treads, he's got that amulet. A lot of armor. That's 18 armor? Jeez, on Febby, that's an insane amount of survivability versus, again, a primarily physical damage based draft.
And you can see, like, Immortals are ahead 6k, but they're still respecting the lineup of TD, right? They don't want to give TD any openings. They don't want to sort of give Viper and PA a way back in the game because these heroes don't farm particularly quickly. They need to sort of win team fights in order to get in order to get their team an advantage. So Immortals, they're pretty content just playing their game right now. And that was a pretty cool escape from Febby, but I feel like even if they caught Spearbreaker out there, it would have been sort of inconsequential.
It's kind of his job just to tank the big gank, make sure QO stays alive, make sure Forev isn't going to be the first one to get jumped on. And it's unfortunate for TD, but still we have at this stage a Night Stalker who long ago picked up a Midas, and we do have this Pycat PA who at one point was on the bottom of the net worth chart, is now kind of pushing towards the top. This is the farm speed of the Mask of Madness, and of course that Empower. Oh man, once you get a crit on a stack of creeps like that, it feels good, man. But
I think
she's
there's
starting
three
to get to that
important.
point.
Before Roche goes on, I think there's 3 important things to note. Immortals, they still have all of their tier 1s and all the map control. Their heroes are better at getting pickoffs, and so they're confident with these kind of Roche attempts because they know.
Ice Path is gonna hold out Misery and CCNC. Macropyre creating a wall of fire. That looked like it would have been really good for TD, but just a little bit too slow incoming, and some great scouting there from Dubu.
Immortals, it feels like they know exactly where and what the Dire are up to, right? So they can go for quick Roshan attempts like that. Actually, it looks like PPD has smoked up his team again.
Well, they'll run into a Jakiro, but they're looking for Ev instead. Ice Path is going to give this Pugna a little bit of cover. So will the charge in from Febby. And it looks like, oh, RP's going to land on absolutely everybody. Here comes the Cleaves and the Skewer. And Immortals are going to take a pretty swift dive here. That's going to be 3 heroes down. They'll also lose the Spirit Breaker and the Aegis, which QO is going to respawn into a whole bunch of heroes. Zai shows up again on this Magnus. Well play indeed. Sometimes you just gotta land a 4-man RP. Sometimes that's all it takes.
It really is all it takes. And there's a BKB complete on the PA, which makes her a little bit more effective against the line of Immortals. And also the Dire, they're starting to get some towers, so they should regain some map control for them and help them sort of scale a little bit better now.
Instantly two towers down for TD as they just push straight in and looking for more. Viper already starting things off on top lane. Slowly. Viper doesn't really push all that quickly, but for Immortals to get hit with an RP of that scale and just get blown up, there's not much that you can do when that happens, right? Like, sometimes that just happens and you have to kind of accept it and move on to the next fight. If Zai can continue delivering on those, then, man, it's going to be so easy for this PA to, at the very least, recover in this game. But for right now, CCNC, kind of the only one presenting himself up towards top lane, will force Staff out of the Boundless Strike. And QO will get skewered right back in towards the Viper. Febby is here, but he canceled his charge earlier, so he can't actually help QO, who's going to get picked off just by himself. Misery now, up in the air, is going to find Febby. With the silence, they'll have to fight through this Ice Path, but I think they should be able to do this. There's so much chase power as Mask of Madness gets activated on the PA, closing the distance in a flash. 2 kills more, plus even more towers. We're going to see this swing really hard back into TD's favor.
It seemed like Immortals were very wary of kind of scenario from happening. You know, they were playing really carefully from like the 10 to 20 minute mark, but looks like 1 or 2 missteps, maybe some overconfidence with that Aegis got to them, because the Dire, they're starting to come back. They got, you know, not only a lot of kills, but as you mentioned, at least 4 towers here, so all of the map control and all of the net worth advantage that Immortals had gained in the early game are now gone. So Immortals, they have to play carefully from now on. I mean,
still lose that top tier 2, at least gain a tier 2 of their own over in this mid lane. And still for TD, I mean, now at this point the Magnus has Blink and 4 staff, so it's a little bit easier for them to start these engagements. It did seem like both of those earlier fights, it was just Immortals getting smoke ganked at kind of a wrong angle there. So if TD can keep that up with the smokes, that'll be great, but we'll see if Zai can do even more for his squad and just start all these fights off. Even on just like, you know, screwing one random hero back like Dubu over in the bottom lane could just be good enough to give TD a little bit more room to now clean up the bottom lane of towers. Still 2 towers remain there for them to take, so TD, they are going to make their move down to that bottom lane, and Immortals, I think at this point, now that they're all back, can actually have a reasonable shot at defending it if they want to. I don't really think they will, but if they are really intent on holding on to this map control that they've built up for themselves, then for sure a fight around this tier 2, tier 1 bottom lane will be what they're looking to do, or just a charge in towards CCNC. Okay, it's a good idea to cancel Febby.
I think the important thing to note about that RP, just so Immortals don't end up in that situation again, is, you know, the reason why Zai was able to land that 4-man RP, not just because Zai is patient, but because Immortals, they sort of grouped up to protect the Pugna, and as a result, they gave an opening for that RP. So, you know, I think the PPD squad, they're playing this perfectly now. They know that they're sort of in a position where Immortals have to be more careful of how they take their initiation, because that RP is the biggest teamfight spell on the map right now. So they're the PPD squad are like a little bit more confident about grouping up. Immortals, they have to stay grouped up just in case they get initiated on, and as a result, you know, Immortals, their lineup can't function as well as it would want to, because it feels like in an ideal scenario, Immortals would still be looking for pickoffs, and TD would be like stuck trying to get farm on several parts of the map.
Immortals, though, will in fact make that defense. It's going to cost them, well, it's going to cost both sides, honestly, quite a bit of time. Just sitting around, not really farming, just sitting there waiting for a fight to maybe happen. So Immortals, you can't go for the pickoffs when TD are grouped up like that. And they are still working with this DK. Not exactly a great farmer. Can do a lot of damage with farm, but you can see 10k net worth. Let's make a note of this. 10k net worth, 28 minutes in the game. Unless Immortals start winning just miracle fights where they 5-0 the enemies and DK survives, or even just like reasonable fights where the DK ends up surviving, his farm is going to pretty much stay at this mark for easily the next 5 minutes. Like, this guy needs to start getting kills, especially with this build. Like, you don't go for a Shadow Blade and then plan to sit back and farm.
And the cool thing is that Immortals can still win a teamfight really easily, right? They have a ton of damage coming out of Monkey King and Pugna, so it's really not that they'll lose every teamfight, it's more like they have to be extremely careful. Especially since their cores are relatively squishy, with the exception of Dragonite. But if Immortals keep the lanes out and they keep good vision on the map, I can totally see a scenario where they continue to take the lead again, just because there's so much burst potential coming out of their heroes.
PA has gone for that Diffusal Blade, which is not really like the item you want to go for as PA, but is certainly going to be very nice at trying to deal with that Pugna, trying to you know, also increase your agility, just makes that Empower just a little bit more potent, and of course Chasing Power is not to be underestimated either. So she's getting her kit up, and Pycat, after one of the worst starts I've ever seen on a PA, is suddenly on top of the net worth chart after winning a handful of fights. Dire are once again grouping up. This time though, Immortals may be able to get the jump on them, because MP is Shadow Blade. He's going to jump in on the Night Stalker, Ice Path the Chain Stun, and they will just beat down this Night Stalker first. Is there anyone else who they can go for though? QO is going to bounce up. He doesn't have the Primal Spring, so he's just got to drop down regularly. The Drain doesn't do anything up against this BKB. As Viper now picking a fight with MP toe-to-toe. They're going to look for CCNC. The Skewer on QO actually misses and freezes Zai, so there's going to be no easy RP here. With the Nether Strike onto Pycat, he'll have to make a break for Ev. He's just kind of trying to race down everyone, but up against this DK, there's not that much damage coming out of this PA. Ice Path will miss, as they do unfortunately get that Nether Bash, but it doesn't matter. They beat him down with QO's stick. They don't get the Viper. He's able to slip out of there, but MP, in almost like a dream scenario, is able to tank all the shots from TD, and that skewer could have won TD that fight, but it was just off the mark.
Just off the mark, but I'm not even sure if it would have done anything at that point. I mean, Immortals, they did a great job of bursting down the Night Stalker at the start of the fight, and then they caught several Dire heroes in a weird position, and now Immortals, they find themselves taking racks.
They have that Liquid Fire, they have the Blast, Nether Ward as well, doing a little bit of work, but it's mostly just MP. Feeling pretty darn unkillable, is going to disarm the Viper, Ice Path to disengage, connects onto Misery, CCNC, Zai, Blink RP onto 2, but it's the 2 that Immortals are kind of okay losing on the retreat. As long as everyone else can escape alive, Ev will get away from Misery. Will take to the skies Misery, but now he can't cancel any more TPs. With a teleport forward from Pycat, if they had vision of QO, they could have probably killed him, but he's going to bounce out perhaps a little bit too quickly. He doesn't expect a PA to be here though. Well, he's going to jump away. Pycat could have went in, missed his chance. They do still see him. They'll dagger him a little bit too far, and QO now is in a little bit of trouble, but he is going to have that BKB. And the Decrepify would have just forced out a Diffusal Blade, but they do get away with that Monkey King. Ultimately, bottom lane, melee Rax was taken down.
It was super important that QO lived there, and that's a huge exchange for Immortals. They don't lose QO, so they can still deter Immortals from pushing their racks. Otherwise, there might have been a forced buyout, right? But Immortals, they win a pretty decisive team fight. They take your racks, but now Dire, they're looking to take Roshan. Actually, this thing's going down quick.
Really quick, but there is a Monkey King right around the corner. He does have his ultimate. If only his allies were there in time, they definitely could have made some sort of play there. And it just wasn't going to be the case. That's going to be Aegis picked up for PA. That was the second Roche as well. Yeah, we got Cheese on the Viper. And that is going to give the Dire a lot of space. I still can see a situation where Immortals get away with a good team fight, despite going into Aegis Cheese. And it looks like with the smoke, they're not scared. They'll go in anyway. This is certainly going to be unexpected. For one thing, Misery is nowhere near the rest of his team. When you get Aegis like this, you don't get jumped. That just doesn't happen. But Immortals are going to go in anyway. QO's going to take a Viper Strike, put up his ultimate, put up his BKB, just duel to the death with CCNC. With the Jingu's lifesteal, he'll swat down PPD, one-shot him, and actually survive the duel versus CCNC. Yes, make it an even trade. Misery's going to take a lot of damage from MP in the meantime. Febby just trying to chain stun Pycat, keep him out of this engagement so that they can focus on the other heroes. RP does land onto 2, but there's no follow-up because the PA got turned ethereal. And now she's going to take a dual breath to the face, lose her first life. Zai, on the way out, is going to stick up, but Forever's on his tail. Should be able to deal with him. Now back towards this PA. Charge in, right clicks from the Dragon Knight. PA just perma-stunned. Is going to jump out slightly towards Misery. Maybe go for a rush kill. No, it's not going to happen. Double kill for Forever's MP. Once again, going to stealth up and look for Misery. Doesn't have the mana, though. He'll do a little bit extra damage with that initial hit. And they will cancel that charge from Febby as CCNC and Pycat both buy out. Now looking to go for Forever, but Forev's already drained out. The Night Stalker will die to a crit from Pycat. Febby will TP out, and it looks like now again Immortals are on the full retreat. Jump forward from Pycat. Dire crit? No, not into Dubu, but Dubu's also completely without mana, so he's pretty screwed here. CCNC from the low ground gets the last hit. MP once again gonna go invis, and it looks like that should just about be it. But man, the element of surprise, that tank ability from the Monkey King sitting in his level 3 ultimate, that ultimately ends up winning Immortal that fight.
Taking a look at the fight recap, that's hugely in favor of Immortals. They get rid of the Aegis, they spend 2 buyouts, and they kill like collectively 5 heroes. And that was a really cool movement by Immortals. I mean, you don't usually expect a team to run into an enemy team with Aegis there, but apparently Immortals, they sensed an opening and it worked out really well. The Night Stalker wasn't there to give vision, and also it was nighttime. Night Stalker didn't have ulti, so Immortals, they kind of got the initiation they wanted, and they sort of understood the kind of team fight they want to take, right? Like force out the BKBs. Monkey King can continue to hit the Viper because Monkey King doesn't care about the BKB, but most importantly, as soon as the PA's BKB runs out, she's extremely ineffective against the Pugna.
Not only up against that Pugna, but also that Spirit Breaker, doing a lot of work to just control that Phantom Assassin. You know, when you do charge the PA, when you do Nether Strike the PA, you're not looking to do damage. You're just looking to keep her stunned so that your allies can do the damage. Speaking of doing the damage, she will get that BKB forced out. The Drain is doing nothing here, and she will have the Phantom Strike out, but QO gets forced that forward. Does have a Haste Rune. Is going to start getting to work on a Pycat. Drops his ultimate right in the middle of really nothing, as everyone from TD are able to separate. A perfect split away from that Monkey King ultimate. He's going to get everyone back to safety. They do lose another BKB charge on the PA. But, you know, Monkey King, his ultimate doesn't really have the longest cooldown in the world. Does end up spending a BKB of his own. They'll just back up and go for the shrines. I mean, bottom lane is still pushing.
That's a great disengage from the Dire there, especially since Kiwa also uses BKB and ulti. You know, I'd say this game is still fairly even, right? Just because if Zai lands the right RP, his team automatically wins the fight, but Immortals, I think after that 4-man RP from Zai, they've been really careful of their positioning, and CCNC dodging a bit of a charge there.
Radiant's top shrine is under attack.
You kind of just see that careful positioning in what they did just now with the Monkey King, like charging in with haste, dropping the ultimate right in the middle, and his allies were in a pretty bad spot. If there was a fight in this narrow corridor, like RP to land is really easy to do from Zai, but they were kind of staggered in on their approach. Make sure that the Magnus would have had to wait a very long time to actually get any RP angle there. So they'll just rotate around, kill off all the shrines. And now here's the awkward part for Immortals and for us, where we don't know if there are any smokes left. I'm pretty sure that's still bugged in Dota. Usually this is where you want to pick up Roche and start to think about high ground if you're Immortals, or smoke gank your opposition, but not really sure if either of those things are in the cards anytime soon.
I think Immortals are looking at the fact that it's nighttime and being like it's kind of harder for us to take a fire, obviously, against the Night Stalker. And vision's super important for an initiator like
tries it.
Nice attempt there.
They do weave up a couple of heroes offensively. They get the Nether Ward out of the Pugna, which isn't huge here, but still something, and everyone's gonna back off.
And talking about items, you know, Piket's got the BKB, got the Mouse Commandos and a Defusal, but I feel like instead of a Lincoln's, maybe she needs something like a Manta style to remove the Liquefy from herself, but also help scale her attack speed. I feel like Lincoln's is too defensive in an item on Phantom Assassin, especially in a game like this.
We'll get some blocks. I mean, that's for sure, but at the same time, Immortals do have quite a few spells they're going to be kind of happy to waste into that Lincoln Sphere.
MP's going to catch CCNC here.
Found CCNC with the Dragon Tail, charge in, plus the Drain. QO's here for the chain stun, and he will just come in and steal the kill. Monkey King getting some value, and Viper is dead for 80 seconds. He has no buyback. He expended his earlier. This is that opening that they needed, and they didn't even need smoke for it.
At this point, Immortals can slow siege the tower with Liquefire, with Dragon Knight, with Nether Blast, and they're pretty safe doing it, right? Just because Viper dead for 60 seconds, no buyout. Really, that removes a lot of damage from TPD's lineup, so...
They're going to get the skewer back onto the Jakiro. Need it Force Staff on Dubu as Pycat does give chase here. Despite the heal, Pycat will just burst that hero down, but now QO drops the Wukong's command right in the middle of absolutely everything. Come at me, bro, he says. You don't really want to go into this circle because, you know, Monkey King's kind of unkillable there, but you kind of also need to go into and land the RP onto a couple of the cleaves are coming in as well. Pycat doing the damage. QO will survive, but they will take down MP. And they actually kill off QO. He's going to start bouncing up in the trees. They're onto Forev now. He's going to try TP out. No crits needed here as Pycat, just with right clicks, is going to get the kill. Febby is now charging up towards the north. He'll be fine. They do clean up 3 as, again, Zai delivers with the RP. They take the melee racks, though, so maybe perhaps a little bit too late.
Yeah, I mean, a bit of gold going the Dyer's way, winning that team fight in a way. And actually, is Kyo going to die here? That was really close.
He's Monkey King, so no.
So, I mean, Immortals, they're still in a position to defend this tower, right? The lanes are sort of in a good position. Mid lane is still in the middle of the map, so by the time the Dire end up at this Rax, I think Immortals heroes will respawn, which means that they have some time to reset. Now that they have 2 Raxes, you know, their lane pushing situation is a lot better for them, so Immortals definitely in the driver's seat of this game. They just have to look to regroup as soon as their heroes respawn, and then try to make sure that the Dire don't end up with the next Roshan, which should be respawning soon.
That's going to be a short-ish spawn. Not really going to be the game giving Dire that immediate opening, but or TD the immediate opening to crash that and steal it. But at this point, it does seem like with the racks and a half lead that Immortals have, Roshan should be really, really difficult for TD to contest, if not impossible. We assume that top lane's going to be shoved in as well. Bottom lane, of course, mid lane are all going to be starting to push in.
I think there's two important things to know about the scenario. I assume that Immortals aren't just going to try to YOLO rush just because ripping up in the pit is a bad idea against Magnus. And so Immortals, they're okay with just waiting it out because 2 of their lanes are pushing in automatically. And as I say that, the Dire is smoked up. So Febby's gonna break the smoke.
Yeah, and for Ev as well. Dubu is actually the one to really break it. Ice Path is there as Febby drops down to the low ground. Link Spirit blocks the Nether Strike. Oh, QO up on the high ground, drops a perfect Wukong's command. Is gonna shred PPD first, and actually still have Spirit Breaker alive as they're just turning around with all this damage from the Monkey King to kill off pretty much everyone. BKB still holds on CCNC. They're gonna charge in with Pycat, trying to take down the twin-headed dragon, and she'll get it, but at what cost? Can't escape versus that Diffusal Blade. Febby is going to still have that disarm in the future. They're not going to try to focus down MP, but MP has a million armor. Can't ever get that kill. Febby charging through Pycat will get the kill on the PA. Now onto the Viper as Primal Screen comes in, and the big stick from QO. He's not even level 25, but man, that Boundless Strike does a lot of damage, and that fight looked so good for TD, finding those heroes kind of on an awkward low ground where their allies are on the high ground. That should work out most of the time, but Wuktong's command is a real spell.
It is a real spell, and if contrary to what you said, I think the Dire sort of ganked themselves there, right? They found 2 heroes that weren't important. Most of the damage on the Immortals team is going to come from the Monkey King and a little bit from the Dragon Knight, right? And so by initiating on the Pugna and the...
Oh my god.
Oh, that's going to go down.
Oh, PPD, there's nothing you can do about that. The Nether Strike cuts through the Lincoln Sphere this time. Pycat doesn't have to worry about any CC yet, but his BKB falls. And he just fought back. He's getting a lot of misses, but not nearly enough. GG is called. Immortals, they beat Dire down again with Monkey King, and it did seem like Zai, the Magnus, that was the only like real hope there from TD.
So I think the biggest thing to take away from that last team fight was the fact that Zai got bursted down before he was able to cast RP, and you know, RP is the only team fight spell coming out of the Dire, and so they lose that team fight pretty handily just because the Dragon Knight and the Monkey King were able to do their thing in the team fight. And Immortals, you know, they got a pretty early lead, and I think part of it was that their draft just moves around a lot more quickly than the PPD team, and also, you know, I feel like the PA was probably more behind than she should have, and I think in an ideal scenario for the Dire, the PA and the Viper are the ones moving around, trying to help their team make stuff happen, because instead, Immortals, they made the first move, and it felt like the Dire was just playing a reactionary game, and they just slowly lost over a span of 42 minutes. So really well played to Immortals.
It's hard to be super assertive when your draft is kind of almost forced to revolve around the mag. It's almost like what happens when you pick up this hero. You typically tend to get into spots where you just kind of want to farm, because you farm so quickly. You know, that's not to say that Magnus lost in the game, far, far from it, but TD certainly getting a good shot at this game. They had a lot going for them for sure, but are going to end up losing. This is a best of 3 though, and Immortals will claim game 1. Guys, I'm Mike Larson, joined by Franz. Don't go anywhere. Game 2 coming up soon.